you might not, as a driver, you might not find a monetary value on the front end, right? You're going to do this Netflix series for nothing, right? But the payment comes down the line. The investment you made in the series creates value for you on down the road. I wanted to say, I know you came into town to be a part of this announcement with Kyle Larson doing the double again. We're all very excited about that. We're very thankful that you are a part of providing that effort. I'm thankful for your time to come here today and
my pleasure
and just chat. I've loved being able to learn about your own path and how you got to where you are today. We see you, and hear about you over the last several years as the CEO of this big brand, but had no idea really what got you to that point. I do know you mentioned owning the Blue Goose or the 1984-85 Monte Carlo that Dad.
Is that what you called it? Blue Goose?
I think it was named the Blue Goose because of the paint scheme.
Yeah.
I might be incorrect, so I don't know if you want to pick that up. But they had a nickname for that paint scheme that he ran in that specific 1984 season. You also owned at one point for I don't know how long the Nova.
Yeah.
So this car that sits here next to the table on the other side of the glass in the shop is the Xfinity or Busch Series car that my dad raced in the 80s. It ran. We have really cool documentary, right?
Yeah.
So it won a lot of races throughout the 1984, 5, 6, and maybe 7 season, and won at Charlotte, Atlanta, Daytona. Did all these great things, right?
Yep.
And I want to tell you this story. And you may have heard it, but I need to tell it to you, and I want to share it with you. So, you had the car. I knew you had the car, and I would see it pop up every once in a while, and I was just amazed that it even existed, and I was in somewhat disbelief that it was really the car, right? And so, apparently, right before I purchased it, it had been sold at an auction. And man, it had been to Goodwood. You had taken it to all these amazing places. It had these stickers all over it from all these places that it had traveled to, and finally it was coming up for sale at another auction. I had heard that this thing sold for around $60,000 at this one place, and now it's going to this other auction, and Rick was going to be there.
Yeah,
and I'm like, hey Rick. I need you to buy this car for me. I've never really asked Rick to do that, but I thought he could do it. And so I'm like, it sold for this. He asked me, he's like, what do you want me to buy it for? I said, well, it sold for this, so I don't know if it gets to 80, 90, whatever, we'll get it. But I didn't know if it was really the car. I couldn't put my hands on it. I couldn't look at it. I had all these photos from the auction site. My uncle, Robert G., that still works here at Junior Motorsports, hung the original body on that car. Obviously, I have access to Tony Uri Sr. that built the car and worked on it many times. So I'm showing them all these pictures, and both of them are going, yeah, it looks like it. It looks like it. And I'm not like, I need a 100%, right? I'm going to spend $80,000 on this thing.
Yep.
And how in the hell can I find for sure? Now, it had this homemade drive shaft hoop. The car went to the racetrack without a drive shaft hoop in it, and NASCAR said, don't bring it back unless it has the drive shaft hoop. And I remember being at the shop in Memaw's garage out back behind Memaw's house when the car was there, and watching Dad hammer this drive shaft hoop out of a stick of steel, right? And he heated it up and bends this hoop and puts the hoop in there and says, all right, we're good. And so it still had that hoop written on it. And it was unpainted. It was original. It had these writings on there and all this. So they were like, well, it does have that drive shaft hoop your dad made. That is in there. So that's kind of an official. But I had no idea how to really truly know. All right. And coincidentally, my mother was fighting cancer. We were at her home. We were spending a ton of time with her around this period of time. And I was sitting in her kitchen with my brother-in-law, LW, and Rick has bought the car. The car is now at my house. Rick bought the car for $180,000.
Yeah.
Like twice what I thought we were going to pay for it. He even called me and said, I got the car. And I was like, awesome. He goes, I had to pay a lot for it. I was like, well, how much? When he told me, I hit the floor because now I'm really nervous. Is it the car? Is it the car? I'm freaking out because if it's not the car, oh my God, I've really now
paid a lot.
Yes, I paid a ton
for not the car.
I'm sitting there in my mom's house, and I'm looking at all these pictures. I've got a million pictures of this car from its inception when it was built up until it was sold at this auction. I mean, just decades of photos. Trying to figure out if I can find a fingerprint to know. And there's a picture of me taken when I was 12 years old, sitting in the car in the garage at a racetrack, and the photographer took the photo from the passenger side, and I'm just in the car pretending to drive it, right, as a little kid.
Yeah.
And I was just staring at that photo, and it dawned on me that the radio box was mounted in that car on the A-post and riveted to a sheet of steel that went from the top door bar to the top of the sheet metal door on the car, the door top. And so I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, if this is the car, those holes should still be there. Now, maybe that tin's been replaced on the door top, but this door bar, this A-post, would still be original, and those holes would be there. And so I ran down to my shop about a half a mile, and I walk into that shop and walk over to that car, and my heart was pounding. And I peeked in there, and the sheet metal is original. The two holes are sitting there, and the two holes are on that A-post. And it was cocked. It was cocked in an odd manner. Somebody hurriedly mounted this thing, so it was in a unique, sort of imperfect way. And I'm like, it's the car. No
Unbelievable.
Question. So there were a lot of markings that we learned also that you may already know, because I know you probably did your own homework. Dad would get in his cars, and he had this, he had that old style seat that we talked about. He would take a dolly hammer, just a ball peen dolly hammer, and hammer the shit out of the floorboard. Didn't care what it looked like. He beat the floorboard down as far as he could go before it would contact the trailing arm to get the seat as low as possible. He'd cut the bottom corner out of the right side of the seat and literally not patch it. So he would set the freaking cushion of the seat literally on the bottom of the race car, trying to get as low as he possibly could. All of the floorboard in that car is beat to shit with a ball peen hammer.
Cool.
And so there's a couple other things, that we noticed about that car to really truly 110% feel confident that it's the car.
Yeah.
And so I know you probably never guessed it, never second guessed it. Being the son of the guy who owned it, I needed like this really 110% proof. But man, what a great relief that was for me.
Cool car.
And the last thing I want you to know is, I said this when you first walked in, that car means the world to me. We spent a ton of time and effort, and my uncle Robert G., who hung the original body, helped me restore it and hang this body that's on it.
Looks awesome.
And it wouldn't be here had you not shepherded it and taken care of it all of those years. Those cars don't exist anymore. They don't survive, right? Yeah. And so I'm so appreciative. If you do anything else for me in my life, it'll never mean more
That's awesome.
than what you did for this car, so that I now have it. It wouldn't be here today.
That's awesome.
And so I'm thankful for you and your passion and your love for racing. I'm thankful that you invested in that and took care of that while you had it.
Now I got my Wrangler car.
Yeah, and now you have the Wrangler car. But man, I appreciate you. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Love talking racing.